one wouldn't normally want to go to hospital unless you needed to at the current time.
So welcome back to Ask Dr. Hillary Coronavirus Explained, where we put all of your important questions to the most trusted medic in the nation. We're going to start by talking about Boris Johnson, who's obviously last night was admitted to hospital. How serious must it be for the Prime Minister if he's actually being put in hospital?
Well, this usually happens when somebody has respiratory distress, when they have breathing difficulties. And it's been said that it's a precautionary measure, but actually one wouldn't normally want to go to hospital unless you needed to at the current time. What they'll want to do is make sure that his lung function is okay, that his oxygen saturation in his blood is normal. They'll want to do x-rays, probably a lung scan, possibly an echocardiogram to check his heart function, and liver and kidney function too, because those things can be affected by this coronavirus.
So should we be worried about Bojo at the moment then?
Well, obviously we wish him all the best. He's been working hard despite having a high temperature for some days. And of course, it's always of concern when someone is admitted to hospital with respiratory problems. And this virus is unpredictable. So our thoughts are with him, and we obviously hope he makes a good recovery.
What might doctors be testing for in the Prime Minister?
They'll be testing for any infection of the lungs. So they'll want to make sure that he hasn't got any areas of pneumonia in his chest. They'll want to make sure that his heart is working okay, and that the function of his right ventricle particularly, which pumps blood around the lungs, is up to standard. They're looking at those kind of things.
And what kind of sort of options for treatment are available for the Prime Minister or anyone if they have these kind of symptoms?
So the first thing to sort out is whether he's got the infection. So we know he's tested positive already, so we know he has. The next thing is to make sure that his oxygen levels are okay. And if they're not, then clearly they'll give him some more concentrated oxygen than normal air that we breathe. In the form of an oxygen cylinder and possibly a mask. It may be that they'll put him on a positive airways pressure mask called CPAP, which pushes the air under a bit more pressure into the lungs to inflate them better. And it may be that they consider a medication that might be thought to reduce the amount of virus that is getting into the cells of his body and replicating, so that there are a number of possible treatments that he might be offered.
As you say, we wish him all the best. Let's move on to your questions, the people's questions. We're going to start with Marie Mundy, who asks, why is there no treatment for this virus yet?
Well, this is a very new virus. We hadn't come across it at all until 4 months ago. And being a virus, it's not susceptible to antibiotics of any kind. And there are trials going on now, both in the UK and around the world, to see which existing medications can be reused, if you like, in a different way, trying them out to see if they can help against the effects of this virus. So amongst those that are being looked at would be high-dose vitamin C. Another one is dexamethasone, which is a potent steroid to reduce inflammation that can be caused by the virus. And the other one is hydroxychloroquine, which is usually used as an anti-malarial. It's thought that that can possibly reduce the replication of the virus in the early stages of the disease, but it's by no means certain, and trials are ongoing.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next question from Michelle Jones. Now, they ask, why aren't all key workers being tested for COVID-19, or at least, for example, supermarket staff who encounter hundreds of people every single day?
The answer is the number of availability of tests. So the people that we most need to test are the very sick patients in hospital, people already in hospital and those coming in with respiratory problems. We need to know what we're treating. So the limited number of tests that we have will first be offered to those patients who are in most need of it. The second hierarchy, if you like, for people who need the test would be frontline healthcare workers, anaesthetists working in intensive care, along with intensive care nurses. Then people in urgent care, critical care and accident and emergency, seeing patients who are testing positive themselves. We need to make sure that those doctors are tested. We need to make sure that they are clear of the virus in order to put them in front of patients who may not have been exposed to the virus, to protect those patients. So the limited capacity that we have, those tests will be offered to those people first. Later on, they'll be offered to people's whose, say, families of key workers who are all self-isolating, but we don't know if they've got the virus. So if a family is self-isolating, one of those family is got symptoms suggestive of the virus, then we can test them so that the key worker who is self-isolating with them can get back to work. And later, when we've got more tests available, then we can provide other key workers with the test.
Great stuff. We'll move on to the next question from Carol McKilney. Now, she asks, if someone tests positive for COVID-19 and recovers, does this mean they cannot be infected again?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Mostly with any kind of viral infection or bacterial infection, when somebody's had the disease, their immunity is sky high after they've recovered and they're immune. But for how long with this virus, we don't know, because it's such a new virus and we just haven't been able to do those tests yet. We're working on serological tests to see if antibodies are present after people have recovered, and for that matter, how long they last. But that remains to be seen. The likely thing is that they will be immune for several months, if not years, but we have to wait and see what the answer is to this.
So Richard Ebbage asks next, why are we not being encouraged or made to wear masks, even if homemade, when leaving our homes? Surely anything helps reduce the spread of the virus, however little is better than nothing. And obviously Richard's question also links in with different varying advice from other countries about whether to wear masks or not to wear masks.
Sure. Good question. Well, here's the thing. If you consider how big a virus is, a virus, probably 10,000 of them would make up the size of a tiny end of a pin. They're so tiny you can't even see them with a conventional microscope. So most masks, if you put a scarf around your face, around your nose and your mouth, the virus is easily going to pass between the holes in the fabric, easily pass between anything you wrap around yourself. So that's not going to work, and nor is a mask which has got large holes in it without any filter that is good enough to protect you from the virus. The other thing is that if we wear masks that aren't very effective, we tend to fiddle with the mask, to put our hands on the mask, and that actually can encourage putting our hands to our face and spreading the virus from our hands to our eyes, nose and mouth. So some people have said poor masks can do more harm than good. We've seen in some cultures, particularly in the Far East, people wearing masks a lot. And they do it if they've got symptoms themselves to stop coughing and sneezing over other people. Now, that makes sense. If you've got symptoms, wear a mask to protect other people. But in terms of just going out and about, going to get your emergency supplies, getting to get your food from the shop or from the medicines from the pharmacy, wearing a mask as a routine is probably not very helpful. But it is for people face to face with the public, if they can get a good mask.
Now, this next question is really interesting from Rosalind Bowden. Now, she asks, can you catch the virus by standing next to someone who hasn't coughed or sneezed, or just simply by walking past them? How long do droplets survive in the air?
Well, the virus is quite a fragile virus, and it doesn't like the dry atmosphere of outside. It doesn't like ultraviolet light, so it doesn't survive very long at all in the open air. In terms of people being able to transmit the virus if they've got no symptoms, yes, we think that does happen. And that is one of the reasons why this virus is considered to be so transmissible and so contagious. Walking past somebody, no, if you're 2 meters away, as we're asking people to be, to physically distance themselves from other people, the likelihood is absolutely tiny that the virus would be transmitted to you. So as long as you keep your distance and you're standing in a queue, if you like, for supplies 2 meters apart from everybody else, you're minimizing your risk.
Can I add on to that? Let's say you're 1 meter away from someone and they still haven't coughed or sneezed. I mean, is that still dangerous?
It's not dangerous, particularly compared to someone who's coughing and sneezing, because that's an explosive effort coming from the chest and the throat, which can transmit the droplets further. We know that. But we do think that there's a slight risk of people expelling the virus just through talking and the tidal air that they're breathing out when they're talking to you. So a metre is better than being really close, but 2 metres is even better. And that's the arbitrary figure that we've come up with that reduces your risk of having the virus transmitted to you by someone just talking to a bare minimum.
So the next question is from Heather Wild. They ask, I have antibodies in my blood. Will these protect me from the virus, or is it only antibodies created by the virus that will protect me?
Yeah, you've got antibodies to other things that you've already come into contact with some time ago, but you won't have any antibodies to the virus. The antibodies are only made when your body is exposed to the virus. It's a reaction to the antigen in the virus that gives you the antibodies, and they take at least 10 days to really come to a significant level to protect you. 10 to 14 days, possibly longer with this virus. So that's the answer. You make antibodies when you're exposed to the virus, and you can't make them before then.
So this next question is a video question. It's from Maurice Caswell.
I've heard that the coronavirus can live in the throat for between 3 and 5 days. Is this true? And can gargling hot vinegar or salt water kill viruses in the throat? Thanks.
Well, we know the incubation of the virus is around, on average, 5 to 6 days. So clearly you're exposed to it. The virus enters your eyes, your nose or your mouth, where it replicates, and you tend to develop symptoms 5 to 6 days later. Possibly it can take a bit longer than that. Now, vinegar has no effect on the virus at all, and it's pretty nasty to gargle with, so I certainly wouldn't recommend that. Gargling salt water, no, there's nothing in saline that would help you to fight the virus. And whilst the virus itself can be destroyed by heat, just drinking hot drinks isn't going to be sufficient, because they wouldn't be hot enough when the virus is already in the back of your throat to do much good. Probably, I mean, one of the things that has been suggested would be Listerine, if it's got a high enough concentration of ingredients in it. But I haven't seen strong evidence to that effect. A mouthwash would have to be pretty strong. And remember, there are probably thousands of viruses that are going to cause your symptoms. It's not just one or two that you have to get rid of.
The final question is from Hasmukh Shah. Now they ask, is it necessary to wipe your delivered newspaper, and is it okay to touch your face with a handkerchief?
In terms of newspapers, if the virus was on the newspaper, it could stay there for a few hours. But newspaper and cardboard the virus, we know, doesn't live terribly long on those surfaces. But you can't wipe down every page of a 60-page newspaper, and it's important that people get the news that they need to keep them up to date. My advice would be to read the newspaper, and then when you've put the newspaper down, then to thoroughly wash your hands with hot water and soap, and then anything that you've touched on the newspaper, you're getting rid of. That would be my advice. The other question was, just remind me the second part of the question.
Is it okay to touch your face with a handkerchief?
Well, remember that it depends where the handkerchief has been. If you're touching the handkerchief, you could be transmitting the virus from your hands to the handkerchief and the handkerchief to your face. So it's only it's a vector, if you like, in between your hands and your face. So ideally, you wouldn't use handkerchiefs. You'd use tissues, which you can bin and throw away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hilary. Now, if you want to ask a question to Dr. Hilary, you can post on Twitter or Facebook using the hashtag AskDrHilary. You can also go to the Sun's website. We've got a dedicated page at thesun.co.uk/Dr. Hilary, or you can go to Talk Radio's website at talkradio.co.uk.